Okay, so around 2 days ago, the Monetary Authority of Singapore, which is a regulator for all the financial institutes here in Singapore, published this paper, information paper around model risk management around artificial intelligence. Now, as we all know, MAS has done quite a lot of different projects before around regulating the usage of AI, machine learning, and data analytics within the financial institutes here in Singapore. There were projects like Veritas, which was looking into the FIT principle, the fairness, ethical, accountability, and transparency. And recently, MAS has been doing this MindForge project, which is focusing on the Gen AI risk. Now, this paper, as a paper recently just published 2 days ago, is mainly an information paper and some observations around what is going on around the banks, the financial institutes around AI. Now, what's particularly interested, besides all the common modules where the traditional AI and machine learning would share, is actually the specific section that is about Gen AI. That's where we want to look at today. So in this part, the Monetary Authority of Singapore admits that the use of Gen AI in banks is still in early stage, and kind of the regulation framework and everything is still being at initial stage for all the banks. Now, several of the challenges MAS acknowledges. The first one is the higher uncertainties associated with Gen AI because of hallucinations and unexpected and inconsistent behaviors of Gen AI. Now, the second one is actually the difficulties in the evaluation of Gen AI solutions, because typically a lot of times the outputs of the Gen AI solution is actually natural language. So how do you actually typically evaluate them? The third one is the lack of transparency from Gen AI providers, because traditionally the financial institutes typically can develop and train in-house models, while now most of the FIs will need API calling from the external parties like Microsoft, or OpenAI, or Google, or Amazon. And the third-party Gen AI provider may be lack of transparency around the data that users use to train the model, or around the data that they collect from the usage of it. And last but not least is the challenges around the fairness and explainability around Gen AI. There are people who are arguing that Gen AI actually brings better explainability for AI models, because you can prompt the Gen AI just to let it speak to you around its thought process or the reason, the logic behind certain things that it generates. Now, that can also be argued because a lot of the generated logics or generated explanations can hallucinate as well. So that can be error on error. So this kind of challenges are what MAS acknowledges. But one of the most interesting thing I find from this paper, I want to find this, so is that a lot of the, actually multiple places within this paper, MAS keep emphasizing that, hey, most of the banks or all of the banks or all of the financial institutes, the focus is actually to assist or augment humans for productivity enhancement, and not really in applying generative AI to direct customer-facing applications. Now, this actually quite aligns with what my company is working on, that we don't really permit any customer self-service solutions using Gen AI. People can also argue, of course we can understand the reason for that is the generative part is not that easily controlled, and the content that you generate directly to the customer without any validation can be dangerous. That can bring risk, like reputation risk, where jokes or funny things can be generated from a serious solution using Gen AI from your company. But people can argue that, hey, generative AI as an intelligence may not only be used for the generative content part, it can also be used for or to replace some of the traditional machine learning or NLP modules like text classification, sentiment analysis, and so on. And with the right way of evaluation, it should be treated as similarly as to the traditional NLP and machine learning ones. Now, one of the example is how GenAI can be used for chatbots, especially the task-oriented chatbots, where you have quite a lot of content. So let me do this and see if I can explain that well. So traditionally, if we're talking about a chatbot, especially if this task-oriented, the first thing is the user input. So this is a user. It will input a bunch of text. And the first thing you do is actually what you call intent recognition. Now, traditionally, you can treat it as kind of an NLP model. So you can have kind of a NLP model, which is basically doing text classification. What that will result in is basically, hey, actually it's about weather asking or something else, right? Now, this kind of text classification tasks can also be done by a large language model, let's say a GPT model. And you can do prompt on it, just saying, hey, this is a predefined list of intentions like weather or restaurant or something else, right? Now this is a predefined one. Can you actually classify that into this different types of intents? And all of that are just part of the prompts here. And then it can also tell you, hey, this is weather asking. And then what is important is after that, it comes back to some rule or template based responses. What does it mean? It means that the output to the user, like the weather is good, the weather is rainy, let's say, where this rainy actually comes from the maybe called the API, saying a weather API saying, hey, the current weather is raining. But this part is not generative. And when we say it's a large language model or generative AI, it's actually only used as similar to text classification. It's used for intent recognition itself. So can we allow this for customer-facing solutions? It has a fundamental difference from the directly content generation and send that directly to the customer, that types of applications. Now you're just doing it similar to a traditional machine learning model. So this is what I want to ask. And I think there are still a lot of discussions on how should we treat GenAI. But that's it, right? So this is the MES paper. I will put the link into the YouTube video description and hope you enjoy the video. I'll see you in the next. Cheers.